Good day. This is the second part of the third episode of Beyond the Fog podcast. If you haven't seen the first part of this episode, please go watch. As I would skip the introductory step in this episode, in this part of the episode, and we would be talking about the other three trends from the Accenture Life Trends Report 2025. We would start with the impatience economy. We have talked about consumers' impatience a lot on this channel, and this trend also manifested in this report. So, as per Accenture research, 55% of people prefer quicker solutions over traditional established methods. And many are willing to explore riskier routes to achieve their health and financial goals, which by definition require a long period of time to be done properly. So, where classic approaches like hard work and education do not seem to be good enough, people are using opportunities presented by social media and other digital platforms. 63% of respondents said they get inspiration from social media on how to do things smarter. From those aged from 18 to 34, it's closer to 3/4, 74%. Whether it's actually smarter or just riskier very much depends on the chance and the opportunity, the ability of the viewer himself or herself to discern the validity of the content. In healthcare, for example, self-diagnosis is on the rise. In some cases, it's driven by the cost of seeking professional medical advice, and in other cases, by long delays in investigations. So this is the case where the existing structures do not work properly. So people have to look for other ways, for different hacks. In finance, people relate to others who can make financial advice understandable and relatable far more than they can to drive factual resources on a bank's website. And they then project this content on their own situation and try to use that as a way forward. At the center of this trend is the fact that people are becoming more impatient, proactive, assertive, and I would say it's connected to the first trend we discussed in the first half of this episode, which is loss of trust. They trust institutions less, which is why they are willing to follow this advice from this sorts of advices from social media. Report itself does not make that conclusion, but that is my assumption, which, to be honest, I think would be very difficult to argue against. But one other part of it is relatability, and influencers' content is popular because it's relatable. They share lived experience in which people recognize their own circumstances, making it feel like they're close, their recommendations must worth consideration. However, this experience can be replicated by companies themselves, and the numbers show that 68% of customers would interact more with the company that educates them through blogs and videos. So that's a good tip right here. There is one more aspect of this trend that the report does not really discuss much. It's one thing for the impatience and constant search for life hacks to have an impact on the customer choice of the product and the supplier, to bypass all this corporate nonsense. And in other words, to impact customer acquisitions. But the impact on customer retention, on whether or not the customer stays with the company and continues to use the offering, is no less important. To a large extent, it's driven by the overall high expectation of quality of services or goods and the interactions with the company. Once these expectations are not met, customers are very quick to jump ship and switch to the competitor. It was not like that, let's say, 20 years ago. This is why customer support, which I already mentioned previously, is so important. A company can quickly lose clients on this specific stage or step. I have already mentioned it previously, but according to KPMG Global Tech Report 2024, 72% of organizations believe their digital transformations generate business value, but there is a significant gap in execution. 78% of executives admit their businesses fail to effectively use customer feedback. And we have previously talked about large technical debt and inability to properly absorb the technology. So these two problems are somewhat interrelated. To decrease this enormous gap, companies are increasingly treating reskilling as a strategic imperative, rapidly updating their workforce capabilities to keep pace with the technological changes. And businesses are trying to stay agile in adapting to changing industrial policy and incentives on the market and regulations. But as we see, so far they fail miserably. And this might be one of the areas where you want to make sure you're okay in your business. But it's not only that. Let's say Singapore Technology Report 2024, I think, reveals how this impatience is affecting workplace dynamics. There is a notable disconnect between employers and employees, which we would discuss next, on key factors for joining and leaving organizations. Singapore solution for that is employee value proposition, where the company properly understand what the value proposition to its employees is and tries to develop the people in the company both with dignity and with good results to the company. But it's not easy to replicate. And well, maybe it's not a universal solution either, so you need to think properly whether you want to replicate this. In the public sector, government is responding to this impatience by prioritizing cloud adoption, everything as a service solutions and things of that type to enhance the efficiency and improve data management. I think we have all seen that during the last, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 years, all governments achieved some sort of digitization in their services. There are all sorts of platforms that in theory should allow you to make your interaction with the government easy and effortless, sometimes successful, sometimes not, depends. But that is what the government's trying to do. And the issue with the government is that the only competitor to the government is another government. So only if you move to another country you can really change the provider for these services in most cases, but they don't want to face the brunt of this dissatisfaction either. So due to this, there is a growing emphasis on leveraging citizen feedback to influence these technology decisions, and well, probably it would lead to a more responsive and faster public service delivery. But these measures are still somewhat insufficient. The impatience and involvement of the wisdom of the crowd, as they say, tells us two things really. First, people don't quite get what they want. If they did, there is no reason absolutely to go and search for some sort of life hacks. And this is the opportunity for either a new product or a better differentiation for the company. So try to make research in your niche, what sorts of life hacks people are looking for really, and whether you can utilize it to either differentiate or create maybe a new product completely. Second, this sort of behavior is quite disruptive for businesses that require patience, such as finance and healthcare. And these companies might just seek opportunities to position their services in other contexts and ecosystems. Use partnerships and collaborations to counteract the impatience. Overall, the actions required seem to be: one, provide actionable, relatable guidance to your customers in video or blog format or whatever format you are using really. Streamline customer journeys to reduce friction as much as possible, and also work hard on quality of these interactions. You can look up the previous episode, the second one, where we discussed this quite extensively. Seek partners that would either help you to convey your message authentically or help your customers achieve their goals, where impatience and hacks simply do not work. So the first one could be, let's say, influencers that could convey a message better than maybe your internal staff would, and that already have an audience that trusts them. And well, yeah, if you cooperate with other companies, then it might make easier to ride this wave of impatience as well. And you should also implement robust systems for collecting and analyzing customer feedback to ensure that it informs your decision making, so that you actually understand where these issues are, what specific points in their customer journey makes them impatient, and maybe you can just do something about it. We have already touched it in some form, but there is a growing divide between employees and employers, and this is actually the next trend to discuss. Well, few would deny the damage done to workplaces by the pandemic. The number of employees tracking the number of employers tracking their employees increased by 60% during the pandemic, and it never went away. Measures to cut costs stayed in place, mostly. Global employees engagement fell to 37% and is expected to fall further to 34%. And just one more, maybe small, but very notable signal is that 53% of employees chose not to attend an end of the year party in 2023. We would see how it would go this year, but I very much doubt that situation would change significantly, but of course it could get even worse than that. So distancing between workers and work is quite apparent. Evolving attitudes to work have employees demanding more flexibility, better balance, and higher salaries. The surveys show that people prize work-life balance most highly, 52%, with salary and even job security following behind. And work-life balance elevated like this, above all other factors, is, to my mind, is a significant indicator that the promise of money could hold less power in motivating people to work hard, work for you. And well, although it's still very important, after all, it's the second the second in the survey right after the work-life balance, but not the first one. So there are some other dimensions to this split. One other is loss of trust, where only less than third of employees trust their leaders have their best interests at heart. And given this, it's very easy to understand their unwillingness to make any sacrifices for their work, for their company. And 82% of employees say it's important for their organizations to see them as a person rather than just a human resource, but only 45% believe the organization actually do so. So this leads to all sorts of problems. Some start acting their wage. It's a trend describing how even in the wake of layoffs and hiring freezes, employees are increasingly reluctant to take on additional roles beyond their designated scope. And what we also see is growing demand in human interaction by the consumers and employees alike, while businesses are consistently failing this test. Empathic leadership is crucial, but growing recognition that supporting employees' well-being is fundamental to maintaining the workplace dignity. And this includes creating a culture that embraces failure, for example, as a learning opportunity, and adopting skills-first approach to hiring that values employees' competencies rather than their credentials. There is another dimension where employees are also feeling their energy depleted by technostress, which has crept in over the past several years. Technostress is basically the pressure experienced through engaging with all sorts of information systems. So we have all these cracks in the workplace, but the message most frequently heard by employees from their employers is improving productivity. More often than any message about improving customer value or workforce development, for that matter. And AI introduction only adds to that stress. Most companies, 75%, don't have strategies to ensure positive employees' experience and outcomes with generative AI. It could potentially get even worse if leaders in those companies would fall into personifying AI agents. To be honest, that would lead to a direct backlash and make people feel like their bosses see them and bots as equals. Leaders and employees are all reading the same headlines, but those in control of the companies see them differently from those who must roll with any changes. And we see little evidence that companies are seeking to decrease the concerns inside the company on the workplace. Only a fraction of employees, only a fraction of companies, had clear AI policies, half encouraging and half prohibiting AI use. So, at the same time, people in the companies feel that this potentially quite radical intervention in the workplace is happening to them and not with them. And growing recognition that supporting employees' well-being is fundamental to maintaining the workplace is not yet here. There is a recognition, but most companies don't really do things in accordance with it. One thing that companies might consider doing, both for effective AI implementation and for the sake of their employees, is separating jobs and tasks in their explanations about the AI implementations. AI will affect some tasks more than others and will eventually eliminate or at least slim down some of them, but not entire jobs. Leaders need to understand that, first they need to understand that themselves, that jobs and tasks are different things, and clearly communicate that to the employees. Employees, for the most part, care about the quality of what they produce, which is why they also sometimes find it hard to reconcile the promise of generative AI with what they actually see deliver. So that concern would also be covered if you introduce AI as a tool to help and maybe take over some routine tasks while still having the person in place and maybe reviewing its results instead of doing everything himself. Leaders should be very cautious, though, that the risk of faster output is an unreasonable expectation needed in regards to intellectually rigorous or creative work. That if you try to make those sorts of things faster, the quality would almost certainly be compromised. Time to think is a part of the process and is one of the most motivating and fulfilling elements of any role. So do not try to push that hard. Organizations should be looking to make better use of people's creative skills, as we expect them to see becoming even stronger differentiator against competitors who lean too heavily on machine-generated output. So, as I said previously, AI should enhance the capabilities, augment them, but not replace people. And such an implementation, the benefit would be that employees would be able to focus more on being human instead of just being a cog in the machine doing routine tasks. As the quote goes, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment, not the flower. So just keep this in mind. Whether your company is successful in this or not would define whether you would be able to retain the talent and keep it engaged or not. So to kind of sum it up, aim for human to AI collaboration, design roles that balance automation with human oversight, be transparent and communicate clearly about technological impacts on jobs, and invest in employees' education to prepare them for future roles. On the side of the employees, on the other hand, focus on learning transferable high-demand skills and be flexible enough to embrace roles that combine human creativity with higher efficiency driven by technology. All these trends find some sort of reflection in the last trend we would be discussing, which is social rewilding, which we see signs of for some time now. It's essentially a growing appreciation for the physical world and human connection, often both at once. The trend is inspired, or at least the name of the trend is inspired by regenerating the natural world with all these sustainability efforts that we have right now. Social rewilding offers sort of restoring people's natural connections to life, including outdoors, healthy routines, reviving lost hobbies and habits. And there is a notable shift in people being more intentional with their use of digital devices, channels, and so on, rebalancing their use to amplify their real world experiences. So they are allocating all things digital essentially a supporting role rather than continuing to allow it to pull them away from experiences through which they could connect to other people, places, and the world, essentially. Another part of this story is nostalgia. People have always shared an affinity for simpler times. Digitally native generations are seeking textures from the past that hold for them a valuable novelty. For them, the pre-digital era reveals artifacts, experiences that they're culturally kind of absorbing in their modern existence. We have even seen old Polaroid photo cameras coming back just maybe a year ago, en masse, I mean. They were always there, but it was very, very niche thing. But now it's quite widespread, I should say. But it's bigger, much bigger than that. For example, the sense of touch, sound, smell, taste, and all these sensory elements is something that people have lacked for quite a while. So what many people try to build right now and search for is deeper emotional connections with others in real life. There is a growing trend that people looking for relationships, for example, step back from dating apps to try to find ways to meet people in more traditional ways. A study by Axios found that, for example, 80%, almost 80% of young people right now are choosing in-person interactions over dating apps. And there is even a specific quote that follows it. Essentially, I don't want a pen pal. And well, there is one more issue specifically related to dating market that drives this change. Most digital interactions and dating market I would use as an example have a specific decision tree. Let's say we see someone's profile on Tinder, and we are forced to make a decision on a photograph, or maybe a couple of them, and a short text. And then we just go eliminating some people on each step of the way. And it seems very logical and rational when we think about it, but actually it's a sort of a trap, in the sense that, first of all, we are all doing the same thing. So imagine a dating market as sort of a field, and you are trying to find a partner in a specific segment of that field, and you go on that segment so much that there is no grass even anymore, because everyone is searching in the same field, because everyone is making the same decisions essentially as you do when they go through this decision tree. Let's take a simple example. Someone who looks interesting and maybe quite attractive, but not in a way a photo model would. Their attractiveness is unlikely to be catched by their profile photo. So by default, they would be excluded by almost everyone. while in real life, you might find them quite charming. And the same is true about every single step of the way. Previously, it's a very inefficient market. Previously, there were ways where some people could exclude some other people on one criteria, others would exclude on the other criteria. But in real life interaction, it would be dispersed. So even if a segment of people excluded you, there would be other segments that would not. In dating apps, it's not the case. If you do not know how to write the first message, you would automatically be excluded. But maybe you are just shy. Maybe, I don't know, there are tons of reasons why you wouldn't try it and extremely engaging first message, especially since you don't know much about the person you're writing to either. But you would get excluded. That's not the case for real life. So these sorts of inefficiencies are prevalent in digital markets, although they express themselves differently in different contexts. And now people are stepping back from them to real life, which I could only welcome. There is also a surge, worldwide surge of interest in handcrafting activities, like pottery, for example. For hobbies like these, it's not possible to divide attention between what you're doing and the screen. So people enjoy opportunity to focus just on one thing for a while. In design industry, creatives are increasingly experimenting with maximalism through graphic styles enriched with texture, handcrafted elements that are unmistakably human, perhaps as a part of differentiation from AI-generated images. There are reports that show that all sorts of flamboyant styles are on the rise, including interior designs. Then there is a font dynamics, for example. We are seeing the reversal of phenomenon that is called brand blending, where numerous well-known companies appeared caught up in a gradual but constant march into the land of sans serifs. In recent years, however, some brands have resurrected older logos with intricate design details and different fonts that point towards their heritage, and that's particularly true in fashion industry. It's a big and growing, it's already a big movement, but it's still growing, and I think we would soon see a major rebalancing of people's relationships with the physical world. And it's prompted first and foremost by the fatigue of digital first lifestyle, and could be characterized as an intentional shift towards a more balanced and simplified existence. Roughly half of people, well, it's somewhat lower than that, about maybe 42%, said their most enjoyable experience in the previous week was a physical one, and only 15 said it was digital. So just reflect it on yourself. What was your most enjoyable experience this week, for example? Was it a physical one? Was it a digital one? And in fact, there is, this common trend of fear of missing out, FOMO. Now there is almost 38% of people appreciate the joy of missing out on technology. The JOMO, remember this abbreviation. You would probably see it much more in the future. JOMO is about not so much about choosing between physical and digital, but more about finding the right balance of both. You don't want to be dragged along by all the notifications on your phone, making you sort of subordinate of your smartphone. Rather, you want a proper balance where you actually have control over your life experience, and it seems like the balance is moving rapidly from digital first to kind of both on the same level somewhat, and it goes back to the work-life balance that we were discussing previously. Customer service also is crying out for change. Companies in many industries invested heavily in technology that enables them to deliver solutions without needing to speak to customers. Bank branches were closed, chatbots have been deployed, or in order to reduce even voice calls, not even personal meetings, but even just talking to people. And if you look at modern websites, many companies just bury their contact numbers on their websites, somewhere you wouldn't even find it easily. And when people still manage to call them somehow, they are often greeted by automated messages inviting them to resolve their issues online. I had such experiences firsthand, where I wanted to, I think it was with the related to the airplane ticket, and there was only automated system. Just do it however you want, but we won't talk to you. And that makes customers feel like they're just a cost to serve, not an investment for the company. So the companies should follow suit and apply the same rebalancing approach to customer service as people are applying to life. the same is true, for example, for social media. Many 65% people say they are now very intentional, or at least try to be, about their use of social media. So companies would need to scrutinize which parts of the business are best delivered via digital channels, and which would do better by getting them enriched by a sensory, textural treatment or human-to-human connection. And they should be very mindful of their dependence on digital to drive real-world interactions. I expect significantly more people reducing their time on social channels, which would have a quite negative impact on brands' engagement figures. So you shouldn't be surprised that your engagement figures during next few years would be falling. You should expect it and prepare accordingly. Obviously, e-commerce is not going away, but companies will need to find other places where they can get people's attention without overstepping their new boundaries. So buying just a bunch of Google ads would no longer work, not long term. Well, it never really worked, just going after Google ads. But what I mean to say is that you should have an assessment of your products or services, and if it makes sense, if it's possible at all, you should have not only digital channels, you should not be over reliant on them, but you should also look or better say return some of the physical real world interactions with your customers. And coming back to the previous trend we discussed, the movement towards remote and flexible work arrangements is seen as a crucial aspect of this movement. These arrangements allow individuals to have greater control over their work environment, thereby increasing their ability to reconnect with their physical surroundings, to the real world. And you should be prepared for that as well. And you should also remember that your employees are not only your employees, but they are also customers of maybe your company, some other companies. So every customer is someone else's employee. And this trend, we are talking about customers, but we are also talking about your employees in some sense. So you should not be surprised when people would go after you with the purpose to get their work-life balance and their online-offline balance readjusted. So there is also a noticeable increase in consumer demand for sustainable and second-hand products. There are two elements to this, really. The first one is in the vein of what we just discussed, the search for this kind of physical experience, which is connected also to environmentally conscious choices made. But there is also another reason, which is that most economies are now experiencing serious issues, different regions, different issues. But the point is that disposable income decreases in most regions. So take that in mind as well. So what you can go for in regards to this trend? Well, I mentioned some things already, but the main point really is think about what sort of offline experiences you can offer. Target, change your marketing to something that is community centric. Local events, partnerships with grassroots organizations, things of that nature. Also, focus on items that increase these sensory experiences that people are looking for. I will give you one example. When you send cards for donations, quality paper requests, let's say, significantly increase the donation. The number of people who donate stays roughly the same, but the amount grows quite significantly. Even though this paper, it's heavy, it's pricey, but overall donations pay that off just easily. It's not something you can just calculate or rationalize. You can only discover these things by trying it out. So try these things out and aim for the best sensory experiences for your customers in the physical world. And develop products or think of the adjustments and changes in your existing products you could make that facilitate this balance between online and offline life. Do not fight the river, just swim in it where it goes. So I suggest this is the end of my review, and I suggest that after this episode you should be able to review your brand's digital communication channels, just to remind you, and implement transparent trust verification mechanisms to deal with hesitancy and costs of it. Conduct an audit of your products and services targeted at children and teens to develop clear strategies for gaining parental trust, cooperation with them, not against them. Create bite-sized, actionable content on video and blog format that addresses customer needs quickly and directly to kind of satiate the customer's impatience. Schedule a leadership meeting to develop a clear AI integration guidelines that prioritize employees' well-being and creative potential, or if you do not intend to integrate AI in your business for some reason, make sure to work through the reasons that add to your employees' stress and their distancing from the company. Otherwise, you would not be able to retain the talent, even if you would be able to get it. And lastly, design an initiative that deliberately reintroduces human interactions, physical world, sensory experiences in your customer experience, and focus on emotional and sensory connection. This is all for today. Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please subscribe, share, like, and join my Telegram channel. All the links are in the description. Thank you.